I object to you referring to my question as a tangent. It is pertinent to all Canadians, and I do believe that this is a point of personal privilege and shouldn't be deducted from my time, because Canadians want answers to more than just the questions from the journalists selected by the PMO when the Prime Minister pops out of the cottage every morning. Hollywood Squares versions of the House of Commons is not what Canadians expect.
Well, Barrett really does a good port, and so does Davidson. And we said some negative things about Davidson before, but he has a really good point about a possible new wing of the military, like the DART team, which there was and is. But anyway, watch this. It's really good. Better.
Recently, this country has been faced with floods, fires, ice storms, and now a pandemic. Increasingly, our highly trained military is being called to get involved in domestic emergencies rather than in traditional operations that they were trained for. Canada has the best military in the world. Will the government, as a suggestion, consider the establishment of a separate, specialized force under public safety designed to respond to domestic national emergencies?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud to advise this House that the men and women in uniform, the Canadian Armed Forces, have been answering the call. And in all of the provincial requests for assistance that we have received, the Canadian Armed Forces have responded to these requests and provided that assistance in over 1,400 members now deployed, for example, in Quebec, helping in long-term care facilities, 450 Canadian Armed Forces members in Ontario helping in those facilities. They have been responding to those floods and the fires. We're grateful for their service and will continue to be there for Canadians when they ask for our help.
Items pertaining to the massacre in Nova Scotia, including 4 search warrants, 2 production orders, and a closed warrant. That did not happen. Instead, we received a single, highly redacted document. A crisis is not an excuse to hide information from Canadians. In fact, it's more important now than ever for the government to be open and transparent. Why are the Liberals using this pandemic to withhold information about this tragic crime?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member's assertion is completely incorrect. And in fact, our government does not in any way interfere with ongoing criminal investigations conducted by the RCMP. They are engaged in a very robust and vigorous investigation. We know that the people of Nova Scotia and Canadians want answers to the questions about what has happened in this terrible and we're working very closely with the province of Nova Scotia to make sure Canadians get the answers that they need.
Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Chair, the families of the victims, Nova Scotians, and all Canadians deserve answers as to how and why this incident occurred in the way that it did. When will all of this information finally be made transparent and public?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am absolutely confident that at the conclusion of the RCMP investigation, when the investigation is complete and when the facts are known, the information will be made available to Nova Scotians and to Canadians. And we're working very closely with the Nova Scotian government. I'm in constant contact with the Attorney General as recently as yesterday to ensure that that information is available
now go
when
back
it's
to Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Chair, Prime Minister Trudeau is having a waterfront mansion built at Harrington Lake at taxpayers' expense, while the existing mansion is renovated. Can't he just stay at home during the renovations? And how much are Canadian taxpayers on the hook for?
The Honourable
Sorry, Chair. I'm having a hard time understanding what this has to do with the subject at hand. A very good question. 1 second, please.
Je vais constater.
All back the house if you want. Marquez des points aujourd'hui. We ask those questions.
Actually, before we start the clock again and go back to Mr. Barrett, I just want to reply to that question. We've been sitting here for the last number of sessions, and occasionally I do see people go off into different tangents. I want to remind the honourable members that this committee is having to do with things relating to COVID-19. Questions have been asked that have been off topic, and answers have been given to some of those questions. So I want to caution both sides. If you see something that isn't quite COVID related, please let us know, don't answer. And if you're asking a question that isn't COVID-19, please realize it before we have to reprimand you so that we can keep this flowing well. Mr. Barrett, question.
All right, well, Barrett really comes up here next, pretty hard-hitting. Though on the topic, again on the military, we believe it should be another engineer branch that would take care of domestic issues instead of relying on infantry and warfighters day to day. Now, here is Barrett. He wins, he's the all-star of the day with this, taking the government to account and not taking crap.
Submit them in advance.
Dancho, Mrs. Dancho, please.
For shame.
For shame is right.
All right.
Well, the Liberals are more concerned about focusing on the subject that they want to talk about and not allowing annoying questions from the opposition, which has more votes than the Liberals. They don't seem to get that. It's nauseating. Watch Barrett go on them.
Well, Mr. Chair, I object to you referring to my question as a tangent. It is pertinent to all Canadians, and I do believe that this is a point of personal privilege and shouldn't be deducted from my time, because Canadians want answers to more than just the questions from the journalists selected by the PMO when the Prime Minister pops out of the cottage every morning. Hollywood Squares versions of the House of Commons is not what Canadians expect. They want oversight, they want accountability, they elected parliamentarians, they elected an official opposition to hold the government to account, and that's why we're here today.
I want to remind the honourable members, though we're not in a parliamentary session, we do have a certain amount of respect. So when we are referring to people, please do it respectfully, and it can be enforced that we only deal with items dealing with COVID-19. So I just want to remind everyone that this is a committee. This is not a session of Parliament. Mr. Barrett, I'll let you continue. You have 2 minutes and 37 seconds left.
Well, Mr. Speaker, my question for Prime Minister Trudeau is, why during COVID-19, like all times under his government, do these Liberals only tell the truth when they get caught? Why did they try to hide the cost of this mansion from Canadians?
Again, I want to remind the honourable members that you cannot do indirectly what you can't do directly, and stating or calling someone, accusing them of something is not parliamentary language, even if it is a committee. The Honourable, you had a point of error? Point of...
It was the same, Mr. Speaker, to remain on the work of the committee.
Mr. Speaker, I fail to understand what your intervention was there on behalf of the government, because my questions are pertinent, and these are questions that Canadians have. The government is not tabling a fiscal update. They're not giving us a budget. So during COVID-19, what they spend money on, Canadians expect us to ask answers of the government about those things. My questions are pertinent. They are on topic. The government not being interested in answering them is typical 365 days a year, not just during this pandemic. So I fail to understand how it's not relevant for me to ask about the money that this government is spending when they fail to update this House and this committee in an appropriate way. So, Mr. Chair, I'm certainly at a loss on how you expect us to hold the government to account, how you expect committee members to question the government when we have to filter through a narrow channel that is approved again by the PMO. So this is very disappointing, and I can tell you that many Canadians would be disappointed that our questions have to be approved by you for the government. So if in future I ought to submit them in.
Well, we concur with Barrett. The Liberals, this Liberals party group together, they're notorious for not answering any question. They have their paper and they just disregard the opposition in every way, every single time. Today was one of the first days where Trudeau actually answered the question. And to be honest, we even typed it in there. He didn't do a bad job. So this, I guess the people who don't pay attention to politics all the time, they're okay. They don't mind that they're not answering the questions. Well, those that do, it's been frustrating. Everyone talks about it. Even Liberals, even NDP, they're all talking the same thing. They don't answer questions. They avoid it and they have speaking points. And now, Rada there, the Speaker of the House today has really showed his bias by every time there's a motion that comes up, they fly it. He goes with it. And it proves. You know, the Liberals didn't have the most votes, but they're acting like they have a majority government here. And, you know, the NDP, to be honest, they should be joining up with the Conservatives at this point to take down this government. But they're hiding in the background and all friends with him. And there was, when he was in the town of Welland, Jagmeet Singh, he says, I don't like Conservatives. And I won't help them. That's why you got that many votes. Personally, we think that's why we need to get rid of this government. They just do not care about the will of the people. They run like elitists, and they know better. And they don't actually deal with the issues of the people that I know, the blue-collar people around that aren't doing as well because they don't have a great education and a great cushy job. Leave your comments below and have a good day.